Here's a question worth sitting with for a second. What if the reason so many Singaporeans work 5, 10, even 15 years longer than they wanted to has almost nothing to do with money? Stay with me on that one. Because on paper, it doesn't make sense. Singapore has one of the highest savings rates in the world. CPF quietly forces almost everyone to set money aside. And yet, walk through any hawker center on a weekday afternoon, and you'll spot uncles and aunties well past 60 still clearing trays, still behind the till, still working. Not all of them are there because they love the job. So what's actually going on? Let's start with someone very typical. Call her May. 41 years old, works in operations, takes home about $6,000 a month. She contributes to CPF like clockwork. She has a small stock portfolio she barely checks. On paper, May looks fine. Ask her when she plans to retire though, and she laughs a little, then says, "Honestly, I don't know. Maybe never until I have to." That answer is far more common than you'd think. And here's the big idea we're going to unpack today. Most Singaporeans don't delay retirement because they lack savings. They delay retirement because they've never actually calculated what enough looks like. Without a number, the brain defaults to fear, and fear says keep working just in case. Think about that for a moment. If you don't know your target, every year of not retiring feels safer than the alternative, even if mathematically you already crossed the finish line years ago. Let's break down why this happens layer by layer. First layer, and this one is sneaky. CPF creates a false sense of both security and confusion at the same time. Confusing, right? Here's what happens. Because CPF automatically grows in the background, many Singaporeans stop actively thinking about retirement planning. It feels handled. But CPF alone, especially with the full retirement sum sitting around $205,000 for someone turning 55 in 2025, was never designed to fully replace your lifestyle. It's a floor, not a ceiling. A lot of people mistake the floor for the whole house. Second layer, and this one is sneaky, lifestyle inflation. Picture an escalator quietly moving upward even when you're standing still. Your salary rises over the years, your expenses rise right alongside it. A better condo maybe, a nicer car, maybe more dining out. None of these decisions feel reckless in the moment, but add them up over 2 decades and your required monthly income to feel comfortable has crept up so gradually you never noticed the shift. So even a decent nest egg suddenly looks smaller than it needs to be, simply because your definition of enough kept climbing with it. Third layer, and this one is sneaky, fear of the unknown lifespan. Nobody knows exactly how long they'll live. Medical advances mean Singaporeans are living longer than previous generations ever expected. That's wonderful news, but it also creates quiet anxiety. If you might live to 95, how do you know your savings will stretch that far? Without a clear plan, many people respond to that uncertainty the same way. Just work a few more years to be safe, then a few more after that. Now, here's where things get interesting. Because when researchers actually study retirement confidence, the deciding factor isn't the size of someone's bank account. It's whether they've run the numbers at all. People who've sat down, calculated a real monthly retirement income target, and mapped out how their CPF, savings, and investments would cover it, retire with far more confidence and often earlier than people with objectively larger savings who never did the math.
Let that sink in for a second. 2 people with similar net worth. One works until 70, anxious the whole way. The other retires comfortably at 62. The difference wasn't income, it was clarity. So let's actually build that clarity, using May as our example. Say May wants roughly $4,000 a month in retirement income in today's dollars. That's enough to cover a comfortable, unfancy lifestyle in Singapore. Between CPF life payouts and a modest investment portfolio generating passive income, she doesn't need some enormous, undefined pile of cash. She needs a specific number. Once she calculates it, say roughly $800,000 in total retirement assets, including CPF, something shifts psychologically. Retirement stops being a vague fear. It becomes a countdown with a visible finish line. That's the shift most people never make. But here's where most people misunderstand something even deeper. Delaying retirement isn't always irrational. Sometimes working longer is a genuine, deliberate choice because someone enjoys their career or wants a larger safety margin or simply isn't ready emotionally to stop. That's completely valid. The problem isn't choosing to work longer. The problem is working longer by default, out of fear, without ever checking whether it was actually necessary. There's a real difference between "I'm choosing 5 more years" and "I'm terrified to stop, so I just keep going." One is a decision, the other is avoidance dressed up as prudence. So what breaks the cycle? 3 things, and none of them are complicated. 1. Calculate your actual number. Not a vague enough, but a real monthly figure, translated into a target portfolio size, factoring in CPF life payouts starting at your chosen age. 2. Separate needs from lifestyle inflation. Ask honestly which expenses are truly necessary and which crept in simply because your income allowed it. 3. Revisit the number every few years. Life changes. Health, family, housing all shift the target. A number calculated once at 30 won't necessarily hold true at 50. None of this requires a financial background. It requires about an hour of honest math and the willingness to face the number instead of avoiding it. Let's go back to that hawker center for a second. Some of those uncles and aunties are there because they genuinely enjoy staying active, staying connected to people, staying useful. That's a beautiful reason to keep working. But some are there simply because nobody ever helped them calculate whether they could stop. And that's the quieter tragedy, isn't it? Not that people work hard. Singaporeans have never had a shortage of that. It's that so many keep working out of uncertainty when a real answer was available all along. So here's the real takeaway. Retirement age was never really about your bank balance. It was about whether you ever gave yourself permission to know the number. Fear fills every gap left by uncertainty, but clarity, actual calculated clarity, replaces that fear with a plan. You don't need to be wealthy to retire with confidence. You need to know your number, build toward it deliberately, and revisit it as life changes. Because the goal was never to work forever. It was to reach a point where working became optional. And that point is closer than most people think, once they're finally willing to do the math. Before you go, I'd love to hear from you. What's one small money habit you're going to change after watching this video? Share it in the comments. I read everyone, and your idea might help someone else too. If you found this video useful, a quick like and subscribe really helps the channel reach more people who want to make smarter financial decisions. Thanks so much for spending a few minutes with me today. Until next time, keep building wealth one smart decision at a time.